The sound of children crawling over rubble and mangled parts of cars, escaping parts of Aleppo which fell to the Syrian army earlier today. The footage was gathered by Syrian state TV. This woman explained why she'd had no choice but to get out.
They wore us out through starvation, humiliated us. I could not take it and told everyone, leave, this should end.
The Independent Syrian Observatory for Human Rights believes that as much as a third of rebel-held Aleppo has fallen to the government in recent days, causing thousands to flee. But this morning we've heard from some people who live there and dispute this. Our reporter Andrew Bonford has been speaking to them.
Yes, Martha, I've talked to two people living in the rebel-controlled eastern Aleppo who both claim that despite the danger, despite the appalling living conditions, they have no intention of leaving. One of them is Farida, who's an obstetrician caring for pregnant women. She's working in an underground medical centre, and she said the city's been under heavy bombardment all weekend and the bombs are continuing to fall.
The airplane is bombing all of Aleppo. This day they bombed another hospital. The last remaining hospital in Aleppo is now bombed. And now there is so many casualties here, and some people has died, and there is amputations, and there is no pediatrician and no incubators. It's very bad situation. People in the street are talking to themselves that they are going to be crazy. No one here in Aleppo has a full mind. We are all not in our full consciousness.
Farida, we're getting reports that a lot of people are leaving Aleppo now. Have you seen people are leaving?
No one from my area, no one has left. No one can leave. No one can leave Aleppo. Where to go? There is no corridor to go out. And if the people go out of Aleppo, it means surrender, that we are giving Aleppo to regime. You mean the revolution is over?
If you could leave safely, would you leave?
No, I don't want to leave. I want to fight.
And I've also been talking to Abdul Kafi, who's a teacher living in eastern Aleppo with his wife and his 9-month-old daughter. He says many people have been forced out of their homes, but claims they're not leaving the eastern part of the city.
I think these last 3 days were one of the worst for me of all our 5 years revolution. I haven't experienced such loss of neighborhoods. I haven't experienced such bad situation. Just I'm talking to you from my balcony, watching people in the streets, just walking, searching for a house. All the people who moved from these neighborhoods now are looking for houses to be in, having their bags on their backs, and they are walking, women, children, people.
Where are they going?
They are searching for a house, for any place to be in. It's displacement. It's internal displacement. Those people now are reported to flee from the eastern part to the regime. In fact, they don't. And they were reported that they left eastern Aleppo, but this is not true at all.
But it's a very different story from the Syrian government. A short while ago, I spoke to the MP for the city of Aleppo, Faraz El-Shalabi. He claims thousands of people have managed to cross safely into the government-controlled parts of the city.
The past 48 hours, as more Al-Qaeda-controlled areas fell into the Syrian advancing army, the new areas are liberated. So now we have received around 10,000 civilians. They escaped from the terrorists and they came to the government-held areas. More people actually chose to stay home. Just bear in mind that these areas are really large, heavily populated areas. So more people chose to stay home. There is an overwhelming joy of this population that has been held under terrorism control for more than 4 years now, since July of 2012.
And what is happening to these people when they cross over to the western government-controlled part of Aleppo?
These people already, they have relatives, they have cousins in the western sides. So basically they have cousins, they have sons and daughters, they have nephews, they have friends, and whoever doesn't have anyone, there are shelters that are ready to receive them, to welcome them, and to provide all necessary aid to them.
Aleppo MP Faraz al-Shahabi, ending that report by Andrew Bonford. So how should the international community react? Well, yesterday, over 100 MPs from across the political spectrum wrote to the Prime Minister urging her to allow immediate airdrops of food and medicine to those worst affected by the civil war in Syria. About 2 months before she entered Downing Street, Theresa May said she hoped that the RAF could provide aid. But this morning on the Today programme, the Defence Secretary Michael Fallon suggested this was unworkable.
Russia controls what's happening in Syria. They can bring this civil war to an end tomorrow by using their influence. They control the skies over Aleppo with the regime and its air defences. We can't stop this civil war. In the end, it does depend on Russia recognising its responsibilities and, above all, letting humanitarian aid into eastern Aleppo.
All this comes alongside the rise of some politicians in the West who are calling for a détente with Russia. Last night, François Fillon became the candidate for the centre-right Republicans Party in next year's French presidential election. He stood on a policy of fostering better relations with Vladimir Putin. His rhetoric echoes that of Donald Trump, who's promised to work constructively with the Kremlin. Its approach, Michael Fallon, seemed uneasy about Britain replicating.
We've always recognised there are things you need to talk to Russia about to de-escalate tensions when you've got Russian aircraft in the sky alongside Allied aircraft. But what you can't do is treat Russia as business as usual, as any kind of equal partner. Russia is clearly breaking the international rules by what it did in Crimea and Ukraine, and that can never be forgotten.
Michael Fallon. Well, to discuss the current situation in Aleppo and the role of Russia there, I'm joined by the Conservative MP Andrew Mitchell, who signed yesterday's letter, and by Shiraz Maher from the War Studies Department at King's College London. Andrew Mitchell, we heard very moving testimony from people living in Aleppo. A lot seem to have left the eastern part in recent days. Do you think they'll be safe in government territory?
Well, that's not clear, and it depends very much on the situation on the ground. But let us be very clear. We're not on anyone's side in this battle in Aleppo. We're on the side of the starving, ill and terrified citizens there. And what the international community needs to stand up for is, first of all, protecting them from assault and the abiding by the Geneva Convention and the international humanitarian law. Secondly, to secure unfettered access for humanitarian support, not just in the parts of Aleppo which they're able to enter, but throughout Syria. And thirdly, to secure a ceasefire so negotiations under UN auspices can take place. Those are the three critical factors that everyone in the international community now needs to face.
Shiraz Maher, what kind of possibility is there, do you think, of getting humanitarian aid into eastern Aleppo?
Well, I think we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years just how difficult it has been for anybody, not just humanitarian agencies, but journalists, any independent third parties, to work in Syria unimpeded. In fact, just this morning I was talking to somebody who is involved with quite a significant and large charity that is based in Damascus, and they were explaining just how hard it is for them to move around the country, or indeed to do anything without the hand of the regime involved. And I think, again, if we look at the behavior of this regime, it is a regime that has not acted in good faith. It has consistently targeted its own people. So why should we expect them to show any mercy to people who they're close to subjugating in their totality right now in the eastern side of Aleppo, for example?
And we've just heard that there's going to be an urgent question in the Commons on the current situation in Aleppo, replied by the Foreign Office Minister. So, Andrew Mitchell, do you think that all of this, the kind of action that's taking place today, the fact that government forces are making even more inroads into the east, this shows a strengthening position of President Assad?
Yeah, well, it does, and this is a civil war, but the point is that these conflicts only ever end in one of two ways. Either there's an outright military victory by one side, or there is a negotiation which follows some sort of ceasefire on the ground. Well, there isn't going to be an outright military victory in Syria. That we are quite clear about, and therefore we have to try and persuade all parties to focus on giving a breathing space, a ceasefire, so that political negotiations can start to take place. And that won't be easy, and the negotiations will take a very long time. But that is how progress is made. And on your point you made about the position of Putin and Trump, there is a possibility here that these two who appear to get on and have some sort of understanding, could unite together to agree that Assad will be removed from the equation, in the sense that there won't be this American bloc on him having any part in it, and the Russians will do everything they can to try and stop the fighting, which in many cases they are promoting.
Shiraz, Maher, what do you think about that kind of approach? There does seem to be a shifting in different parts of the world in terms of attitude towards Russia.
Well, I think the Russians clearly are the new sheriff in town. They've really asserted themselves in Syria, and the brutality that they have brought to the Syrian conflict has, exceeded even the greatest crimes that Bashar al-Assad himself has been committing. So in that sense, if you're Assad, look at the situation. I agree with Andrew that it's certainly, from an objective viewpoint, inconceivable to see how he could consolidate his control over the whole of Syria once again. But if you are Assad and you're looking at the map today, you're feeling like momentum's on your side. You're feeling like you're winning. You are on the brink of retaking Aleppo, which is hugely symbolic for the regime and for Syria more generally. And then after that, he'll look to go to other places. He did this previously in Daraya, which was another area just 2 miles outside of Damascus, and he besieged it, and he managed to reclaim it. And he went there on Eid, a very symbolic holy day for Muslims. He went there to that town on Eid and declared that he would retake all of Syria. So I think, we are dealing with someone who's quite a dangerous fantasist in that sense. He does not look at the world through ordinary or objective eyes. And from his perspective, momentum seems to be on his side. Why would he negotiate at this point?
Shiraz, Maher, Andrew Mitchell, thank you both.